Chapter 3. Bree lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. She turned her head and glanced to her alarm clock. It read 2:30. Will I ever fall asleep? She wondered. She couldn't get Miss Hollow's words out of her mind. The play has been waiting for you. What in the world did that mean? She recalled the eerie feeling she'd gotten when she first read the play. As much as she wanted to put it down, another part of her felt drawn to the play. She felt as if she had to audition, and now she might actually be getting the lead. Is that what Miss Hollow's meant? Bree looked over at the clock, 2:35. Rolling over onto her side so she couldn't see the clock, she forced her eyes closed. Much to her surprise, she dozed off. When the alarm went off at 6:30 the next morning, Bree woke with a start. She was confused for a moment about where she was exactly. She knew she had been dreaming deep, intense dreams, but she couldn't remember anything about them. Realizing that she was still safe in her own bed, she threw off the covers and started to get ready for school. Today's the day, she murmured to herself as she slipped on her bathrobe. She didn't totally expect to get the lead, but just for fun, she imagined what it would be like to take her bow on opening night. She was stretching her arms way out and bending over when she accidentally knocked into the small handheld mirror sitting on her dresser. It shattered on the floor. "Gabrielle, is everything okay?" her mother shouted from downstairs. "Yes, everything's fine," Bree replied. "Just 7 years of bad luck, that's all," she thought as she quickly swept up the shattered pieces. She then headed downstairs for breakfast, her delusions of grandeur trailing behind her. As she entered the school building a short while later, Bree glanced quickly at the time on her cell phone. She still had a few minutes before homeroom, so she dashed to the auditorium. Stepping up to the bulletin board outside the door, she took a deep breath and scanned the board. Nothing. No cast list yet. She'd have to wait. Struggling to pay attention in her first class, Bree bolted from her seat when the bell rang. Navigating the hallways, cutting and skipping around past people like a quarterback on a football field, she hurried to the auditorium. There she found a crowd of students gathered in front of the bulletin board. Before she could reach the board, Bree spotted Melissa, who shrieked, "You got it! You got it!" Bree squirmed through the crowd and shoved her face up to the board. There, hanging by a pushpin, was the cast list. Next to the name Carrie, it said Gabrielle Hart. Bree was stunned. Her wish had come true. She had gotten the lead. "And I got Rachel," Melissa added, pointing to her own name on the list right below Bree's. I can't believe this," Bree said for a moment, not knowing whether to celebrate or to run and hide. "If you think you can't believe it, wait until Tiffany finds out," Melissa said. "Wait until I find out what?" Tiffany shoved her way to the front of the crowd, her eyes opened wide, and she pursed her lips tightly together as she read down the list. "Ugh, this is so wrong," she whined. "What's wrong about it, Tiffany?" Melissa asked. "You auditioned, Bree auditioned, she got the part." "But I am so much better than her," Tiffany complained. "I have to be in the play." "But you are in the play," Melissa pointed out. "You've been cast as Millie, the ghost who haunts Carrie's sleepover. It looks like you're more suited to play the ghost." She caught Bree's eye and winked, holding back a giggle at her own joke. "It'll be fun to work together, Tiffany," Bree said. In a weird way, she felt sorry for Tiffany. It meant so much to her to play the lead. "I don't need your pity, wallflower," Tiffany barked. Then she turned and stalked away from the crowd. "See you at rehearsal, Tiff," Melissa called after her. "Liz, don't," Bree said. The more upset you make her, the more she's going to take it out on me." "Oh, please, Bree," Melissa said as the crowd began to break up and head off to their classes. "She's got to grow up. She can't always get everything she wants. You won that role fair and square." "I wonder," Bree replied, her thoughts drifting back to the previous day. "The play has been waiting for you." "What do you mean?" Melissa asked. "What? Oh, nothing. I've got to get to class. I'll see you at rehearsal." "See you at rehearsal, Carrie," Melissa called out. "Goodbye, Rachel," Bree shouted back. She was thrilled that her best friend would be there with her every step of the way, but there would still be Tiffany to deal with, not to mention the play itself. At the first rehearsal the next afternoon, Bree made her way to the auditorium. Stepping inside, she found a bunch of students up on the stage, hard at work putting together the set for the show. Many plays had been put on in this auditorium over the 4 decades since the middle school had opened, and so it was no problem for the students who had volunteered to work behind the scenes on the play to rummage through old scenery and props to make a new set. The main set for the play was Carrie's bedroom. Bree stared at the stage, watching the set decorators hard at work. They had been at it for only a little while, but she could see that when it was completed, it really would look as if Carrie lived in a haunted house. The walls of Carrie's bedroom, which now stood stacked in a row waiting to be set up, were cracked and peeling. Cobwebs dangled from the corners. A dusty, damaged chandelier sat on the stage, waiting to be hung. When it was fully wired, it would flicker on and off, as off-stage a student operated a light switch set up to control the chandelier. A spotlight was being set up. It would be placed outside a fake window built into one of the walls. Turning the spotlight on and off quickly would create the illusion of lightning flashing outside during a thunderstorm scene. On the back side of the window, a pair of tattered old shutters hung loosely. Poles attached to the bottom of these shutters will allow unseen students backstage to flap them during the storm scene, as if the wind were fiercely blowing them back and forth against the house. An old piece of tin with a handle on the bottom hung up backstage. When a student shook the tin sheet, it sounded like thunder. Bree smiled widely, picturing all these elements coming together on the finished set to create Carrie's bedroom. Her bedroom. Boo! Bree jumped, startled by Melissa's sudden entrance. Don't sneak up on a person in a haunted house, Bree scolded her best friend, even if it's not finished yet. Don't you know anything? I know that Tiffany is still sulking, Melissa replied. Bree turned to face the back of the room and saw Tiffany sitting by herself, flipping through her copy of the play, shaking her head in disapproval. Miss Hollows entered the auditorium and hurried down the center aisle. She paused at the foot of the stage for a moment, taking in the vista of Carrie's bedroom. Then, giving a quick nod of approval, she climbed the stairs and walked out to the center stage. Ladies and gentlemen, she began. The buzz of excited conversation that had been humming through the auditorium stopped instantly. I thank you all again for volunteering to be a part of this play. Thank you to the set decorators and technical volunteers. Now, may I have all the actors up on stage, please? Here we go, Bree, Melissa said excitedly as the two made their way onto the stage with the rest of the actors, including Tiffany, playing the ghost, the boy playing Carrie's elderly neighbor, and the boy and girl playing Carrie's parents, as well as a few others. Yeah, here we go, Bree echoed, still unable to shake twin feelings of excitement and nervousness. Ready to put on a fantastic play, everyone? Miss Hollows addressed the cast. The actors on stage nodded some more vigorously than others. Bree was somewhere in the middle. Tiffany's eyes were glued to the floor. All right, then, Miss Hollows continued. Let's start from the top. Scene 1. Rachel, Laura, and Carrie. Places, please. Bree, Melissa, and Dara Marinelli, the girl who'd been chosen to play Laura, sat in a circle in the middle of the stage. They began rehearsing the scene. Rachel. Nice, Carrie. The place looks like it was decorated by a wrecking ball. Carrie. Cute. You know, we only moved in a few weeks ago. My family and I haven't had a chance to fix it up yet. I just couldn't wait to have my first sleepover. It helps to make it feel like home. Laura, yeah, if your home's been condemned. Carrie, ha 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 ha, come on you guys, we should. Suddenly, lightning flashes and thunder rumbles. Laura, Carrie, Laura, sorry, I'm just a little afraid of thunder. The thunder sounds again, louder this time. Laura scoops over closer to Carrie. Suddenly, the chandelier overhead flickers on and off, again and again. Rachel, okay, now I'm officially creeped out. Carrie, look! Carrie points to the chandelier. A flash of lightning reveals that the chandelier is shaking uncontrollably. Everyone screams. Okay, let's take a break, everyone, Ms. Hollows called out. Very good start. As the girls in the cast sat down on the edge of the stage to get their notes from Ms. Hollows, the lights in the auditorium began to flicker again, but this time it was not just the stage lights that flashed on and off. Every light in the room twinkled. Please leave the lights on, Ms. Hollows shouted impatiently to the technical crew backstage. It's not us, Ms. Hollows. Tyler LaHarry, the boy running the lights, replied, sticking his head out from backstage. We didn't touch the lights that time. Then the entire auditorium went completely black. Chapter 4. Flashlights, Ms. Hollows shouted. Several members of the backstage crew came running out with their flashlights blazing. I'm going to see if I can find out what's going on with the lights. Perhaps the whole school has lost power, Ms. Hollows said, and left the auditorium. Great, now what do we do? Asked Bree. I have an idea, Melissa said. Why don't we sit in a circle and pretend this is a real sleepover? We could even tell ghost stories to get us in the mood, Tiffany added. Unless, of course, you can't handle it, Wallflower. I'm fine, Bree said. I guess it can only help us get more deeply into our characters. As the backstage crew settled into the front row of the auditorium, the girls on stage flipped on their flashlights and sat on their pillows. I'll go first, Melissa said. Here's one I heard at summer camp. A girl went to a school dance. She was kind of shy and was sitting in a corner when a nice-looking boy came over and asked her if she wanted to dance. No one else had even come near her, so she jumped at the chance. The girl was surprised that she had never seen the boy at school before. He told her that he used to go to the school a few years earlier, but had moved away and that he always tried to come back for the school dances since he liked them so much and they always brought back so many good memories for him. The two danced every dance, and soon it was time to leave. The boy offered to walk the girl home, saying that her house was on the way to his house anyway. During the walk, the girl got cold, and the boy offered her his school jacket, which had his name stitched onto the front. He draped it over her shoulders, and she felt warmer right away. When they reached the girl's house, the boy kissed her goodnight and went on his way. Once inside the door, the girl realized that the boy's school jacket was still on her shoulders. She turned to yell out to him, but he was nowhere to be seen. It had been only a minute since he'd left, but the street was now dark and empty. Then the girl remembered that while they were walking, the boy had mentioned where he lived. She hurried to his house, which was only about 10 minutes away. When she arrived, the girl stepped up to the front door and rang the bell. A woman answered the door. The girl asked if the boy was home, figuring he had to be. Where else would he have gone? The woman's eyes filled with tears as she explained that the boy was her son and that he had died 3 years earlier. "But that's impossible," the girl exclaimed. "I just saw him at the school dance. In fact, he lent me his jacket. Here it is." The woman took the coat and hugged it tightly as tears flowed from her eyes. "Thank you for returning this," she said. "My son died due to an accident at a school dance 3 years ago. I've wanted his school jacket as a memento, but the people at the school said they never found it. Thank you for bringing it home." The girls on stage breathed out a collective sigh. Each girl, without even realizing it, had slid off her pillow and was clutching it tightly. "That was great," Bree said to Melissa. "Pretty creepy," Dara added. "I heard one once that my cousin told when my family went up to my aunt and uncle's cabin by the lake. We were sitting around a campfire, and my cousin told us the story of a school tour group on a trip to Colonial Williamsburg. A small group of kids got separated from the main group and found themselves in front of an old house that looked like it hadn't been touched since actual colonial times. This is not on the tour," one of the friends said. "I don't think we should go in." "Come on," said another. "The tour is boring. Maybe we'll find something cool in there." The group slowly pushed open the creaky old front door and stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind them loudly, startling everyone in the group. Then a man dressed in full colonial costume stepped into the entryway. "Good day to you," the man said. "Welcome to my home. My name is Jeremiah Hobson." "I thought you said that this house wasn't on the tour," one friend whispered to the other. "It's not supposed to be. I guess they added it or something." As Jeremiah Hobson led the group on a tour of the house, he described the day-to-day activities of his daily life in colonial times. The friends were all impressed by his detailed descriptions. "This guy's the best actor yet," one friend whispered. "Yeah, but you'd think they would clean the house up before they took people on a tour," said another. "This place is a filthy wreck." Just as the tour ended, the kids heard the front door burst open. "Hey, who's in here?" someone shouted. The kids ran toward the voice and found themselves face to face with a police officer. "What are you kids doing in here?" he asked them as he stepped inside. "We were taking the tour," one of the students explained. "The tour?" the officer replied. "What tour?" "This house has been closed up and condemned for years." "But what about Mr. Hobson, the tour guide?" "Hobson? Jeremiah Hobson?" the officer asked. "Yeah, that's him. Jeremiah Hobson lived in this house 200 years ago. You say you saw him?" "Yeah, he's right over..." The kids all turned to the spot where a moment before Jeremiah Hobson had been standing. He had vanished. Turning back to the police officer, their eyes opened wide in shock as they watched the front door slam closed, with no one having touched it. "Goodbye, Jeremiah," the officer said, which was when the kids realized that they had been given a tour of the house by its original occupant, or at least by his ghost. "Cool," Melissa cried. "I like it, but I wish the lights would come back on so we could keep rehearsing." "I have one," Tiffany said with a sly grin. "My story is about the very play we're performing," Tiffany began. "I did a little research and discovered that it was first performed 30 years ago. In fact, it was put on in this school, in this auditorium, on this stage where we are now sitting. A creepy drama teacher named Wormhouse wrote the play. She insisted that the school put it on, but she met a lot of resistance from parents and teachers who said it was too strange and too scary and that it didn't have a happy ending. They all wanted Wormhouse to do a safe, nice musical, something everyone knew was comfortable with. But she would have no part of that. She insisted that her play be performed, and in the end she got her way. Right from the start, though, the rehearsals were plagued with strange incidents. Props would break, scenery would collapse for no reason right in the middle of a scene, and lights would go on and off by themselves, kind of like what happened to us tonight. Finally, opening night came, but as soon as the girl playing Carrie stepped out onto the stage to begin the show, something fell from above. It struck her and killed her instantly. All the girls on stage gasped. Tiffany had them in the palm of her hand, and she knew it. Back then, there were rumors that the play itself is cursed, and that whoever plays the lead is destined to die. As Tiffany said the word die, the lights in the auditorium blazed back to life. Bree looked around and realized that everyone on the stage was wide-eyed, and they were all staring right at her. Chapter 5. Thank you, Tiffany, for the very entertaining piece of folklore, Ms. Hollows said as she came back into the auditorium. As you can see, the problems with the lights has been resolved. Now, if we can all get back to reality, I'd like to run through one more scene. Bree did her best to focus as the rehearsal continued, but Tiffany's story had really shaken her. Cursed, she thought. Could the play really be cursed? Was that what she had been feeling all along? Was such a thing even possible? Bree was by nature a pretty rational, straightforward person. She liked ghost stories, but never truly believed in the supernatural. But a strange feeling of dread began to work its way into her subconscious. She was sure she wanted to be here during this play. But there was something else, something she just couldn't put her finger on that was making her question that decision. When rehearsal ended, she headed from the auditorium feeling unsatisfied. She thought that the first part of the rehearsal had gone very well. Then the lights had gone out and Tiffany had told her story. Bree was much less pleased with the quality of the scenes she had run through after that. You okay? Melissa asked, catching up to Bree at the front door of the school. You seemed kind of out of it during that last scene. I don't know, Liz. That story Tiffany told about the play really freaked me out, Bree explained. Oh, she's just trying to get under your skin, Melissa said. She's still all bent out of shape about not getting the lead. She's probably trying to rattle you so Miss Hollows reconsiders. Don't let her mess with your mind. You're doing a great job. You were born to be Carrie. Thanks, Liz, I think, Bree said hesitantly. She knew that Melissa's comment was intended as a compliment, but it reminded her of what Miss Hollows had said on the day of the auditions. The play has been waiting for you. Both statements carried a strange sense of destiny that made Bree very uncomfortable. Bree and Melissa stepped out of the building and into a raging thunderstorm. Okay, well that explains why the lights went out, Bree said, looking out at the wind-whipped trees and sheets of torrential rain. She felt relieved to find a logical explanation for the creepy incident that had so closely mimicked the events in the play. For sure, Melissa agreed. I just hope I have power at home. I have tons of chatting to do online. See you tomorrow, Bree. Melissa trotted over to where her older brother waited in his car to give her a ride home. Hi, Gabrielle, said someone from behind her. Bree spun around and saw Tiffany standing on the steps of the school. Tiffany, Bree cried, startled to hear a classmate calling her by her full name. I have something to tell you, Tiffany said. Bree thought she had said quite enough for one day already, or was she actually going to apologize for always being so snotty? Okay, Bree said cautiously. You're going to hate playing the lead. Tiffany spat out, contempt dripping from her every word. In fact, you're going to be sorry that you ever even tried out for this play. What do you mean? She asked. The amount of work is intense, Tiffany continued, stepping right up next to Bree. Learning all those lines, all the pressure of the whole play revolving around you, everyone is depending on you, you know. That's what comes with being the lead, and it's so easy to let down the whole cast, the whole school, actually. One little mistake, one tiny thing done wrong, and you could ruin the play for everyone. Bree was startled and, for the moment, speechless. I'd quit now if I were you, Tiffany said as she brushed past Bree. Then she stopped and turned back toward her. But fortunately, I'm not you. Bree watched Tiffany disappear into the driving rain and darkness, stunned and confused. She got onto the late bus for students who were involved in after-school activities, her mind still reeling from the bizarre encounter with Tiffany. Was that a threat? After dinner, Bree hunkered down at her desk and dove into what felt like a week's worth of homework. As she plowed through her math and science assignments, she wondered how Megan had managed to be in all those school plays for all these years while remaining a straight-A student. Have a good day, superstar? Megan asked, poking her head into Bree's room, startling her. Pretty good, Bree said. She was not about to share all that had happened with Tiffany that afternoon. Megan would probably say that Tiffany was right. I'm not giving her any reason to put me down again. I'm sure she'd love to see me flop, or even better, quit. Well, be sure to let me know if you need any acting tips, Megan offered. Yeah, right, Megan, Bree replied sarcastically. You'll be the first one I'll go to. Megan shrugged and closed the door. After another hour of homework, Bree began to feel sleepy. She had gotten a good chunk of her assignments done and felt satisfied. Slipping into bed, she read for about 5 minutes before drifting off to sleep. In her room, Bree found herself sitting in the front row of the school's auditorium. The props and scenery for the last sleepover were set up on the stage. How did I get here? She wondered aloud. A crowd of people filed into the auditorium and took their seats. What am I doing sitting in the audience? Bree wondered. I should be backstage or up on the stage or... At that moment, she noticed that something was wrong. Glancing around at the people entering the auditorium, she realized that they looked strange. What are they all wearing? And what's with that hair? They all look like they stepped out of another era. Was it an 80s themed night at the school? But why would they do that on the night of a performance? And why would they ask the audience to also play dress up? None of it made any sense. The lights went out and the actors made their way onto the stage in the dark. Dim stage lights set the mood and the play began. Rachel. Nice, Carrie. The place looks like it was decorated by a wrecking ball. Carrie. Cute. You know we only moved in a few weeks ago. My family and I haven't had a chance to fix it up yet. I just couldn't wait to have my first sleepover. It helps to make it feel like home. Laura. Yeah, if your home's been condemned. That's the scene we just rehearsed today, Bree thought. Then she focused on the girls upstage. Okay, now this is officially weird. Even the actors have hairstyles from another era. As the play continued, Bree grew more and more confused. Suddenly, lightning flashes and thunder rumbles. Laura. Aye! Carrie. Laura? Laura. Sorry, I'm just a little afraid of thunder. The thunder sounds again, louder this time. Laura scoots over next to Carrie. Suddenly, the chandelier overhead flickers on and off, again and again. Rachel. Okay, now I'm officially creeped out. Carrie, look. Carrie points to the chandelier. A flash of lightning reveals that the chandelier is shaking. Bree heard a sharp snapping sound that seemed to be coming from overhead. Looking up, panic flooded through her as she realized that a stage light had broken loose and was plunging down from above. The light was headed right for the girl playing Carrie. Chapter 6. Look out! Bree screamed, leaping from her seat. The stage vanished, as did the girl in the falling light in the audience. Bree was sitting upright in her bed, her heart pounding and her hands shaking. After a few seconds, her mind cleared and she realized that she had just awakened from a terrible dream. She was in her room at home, and the sun was shining through her window. It was like it was right there when the play was first performed, and that poor girl getting hit by the light. Thank you, Tiffany, for planting that vision in my brain. Trying to shake off the effects of the dream, Bree pulled herself together and headed downstairs for breakfast. You look horrible, Megan said when Bree joined her at the kitchen table. Thanks. I didn't sleep well. Bad dreams. About what? Megan asked. The show? Bree replied through her sleepy haze. She immediately regretted having shared that with her sister. Stage fright, huh? Megan said casually, shoving another spoonful of cereal into her mouth. No. Bree finally replied defensively. I'm fine when I'm on stage. It's just the play itself. It's hard to explain, but it gives me the creeps. It's a scary play, Bree, Megan said, shrugging her shoulders. Giving people the creeps is what it's supposed to do. Yeah, but it's supposed to give the audience the creeps, Bree pointed out, not the actors. I've had a nagging feeling that something isn't totally right with the play. Then Tiffany told us that story. Even mentioning the story sent a shiver through her. Story? Megan asked, leaning in toward her sister. Bree recounted the tale of the play as it had been performed 30 years earlier and the death of the girl playing the lead. And then last night I had a dream about it, she said, finishing her story, and I saw it happen, Megan. I was right there, sitting in the front row when the light fell down on that girl. It seemed so real. Sounds to me like that play is really getting to you, Megan said. Bree thought that her sister almost sounded glad. You know, some people just aren't cut out for the theater. There's no shame in that. Maybe acting isn't for you. Thanks for being so sympathetic. Bree snapped, shoving her chair away from the table. You're a big help. She stormed back up to her room to get dressed. That's the last time I go to her with my problems, she thought. I'm just going to get through this play and everything is going to be fine. It was just a dream, that's all, a dream. At school that day, Bree felt more focused than she had in a long time. The dream faded from her mind and she didn't think about the play at all. When the last bell rang, Bree hurried to the auditorium for rehearsal with a renewed sense of purpose. After her fight with Megan that morning, she had managed to push aside her uneasy feeling about the play and was once again excited about playing Carrie. You look positively perky, Melissa said as she and Bree headed to the stage. Perky, huh? Bree echoed. She decided not to tell Melissa about her dream, preferring to forget it. I guess I have been a bit serious about all this. I let that story Tiffany told us get to me, but I know she was just making up all that stuff about it being cursed to get me to quit the play. This is just a play. Uh-huh, Melissa said, looking at her friend a bit strangely. Right, and this is just a stage, and this is just a chair, and this is... Okay, Bree said, sighing. Never mind. Miss Hollows hurried into the auditorium. All right, ladies and gentlemen, she announced. Let's run the Carrie and Rachel scene, please. Bree was thrilled to notice that the set for Carrie's room was looking more like a real room than it had the day before. The set decorators had added more touches. Clothes, books, and general junk were strewn everywhere around the room. A few old, worn-out sleeping bags were arranged in a circle on the floor. A complete mess, Bree thought. Perfect for the scene of a haunted sleepover. Ooh, the sleeping bags are here, Melissa cooed when she stepped onto the stage. Now it looks like a sleepover. The scene they were about to rehearse featured only Carrie and Rachel. Bree was thrilled to be alone on the stage with her real-life best friend. They walked on stage, and Bree immediately let herself be transported into character. She was no longer Bree. She was Carrie. Melissa was no longer Melissa. She was Rachel. This was not the stage in the auditorium. It was Carrie's bedroom. Rachel rushes to Carrie's bedroom. Carrie is pacing, obviously upset. Rachel, all right, Carrie, spill it. What was so urgent that it couldn't wait? Carrie, remember what I told you that I thought someone was following me? Rachel, yeah, it was just yesterday. Carrie, right. Well, it happened again, only now it's happening everywhere. Rachel, what do you mean, everywhere? Carrie, every time I walk down the hallways, I can feel someone following me. On every walk home from school, I'm certain I can hear footsteps behind me, but no one is there. Even when I go from one room in my house to another, I feel it. Rachel, hold on. You feel someone following you? I'm not sure I know what that means. Have you actually seen anyone? Carrie, I hear footsteps all the time, and when I turn around, no one is there. But I know it, Rachel. I just know it. And what's worse, Rachel, there's a worse part? Carrie, I'm positive that whoever is following me means to do me harm. Walking toward the front of the stage, still fully in character, Bree heard a snapping sound from above. She really didn't want to break out of her character, but something told her to look up, even though it wasn't in the script. Glancing toward the track of stage lights above her, Bree saw that one of the lights had broken off and was plunging right toward her. Chapter 7. Bree flung herself out of the way. She landed hard on her shoulder, just as the light crashed to the stage floor. Bree, are you all right? Melissa screamed, dashing to her friend's side. Miss Hollows and the entire cast rushed onto the stage. Gabrielle, are you all right? Miss Hollows asked calmly. Adrenaline shot through Bree's body. She felt numb. The shock of what had just happened, and what had almost happened, made her feel as if time was standing still. She could see the stage light snap, then fall through the air in a super slow motion. The moment stretched out over several seconds, replayed over and over in her mind. She saw the light hit the stage and explode into a million shards of glass. The slow motion scene stopped, and time accelerated back to normal. I'm okay, Bree said, pushing herself up into a sitting position. Her mind began to clear as the shock wore off. Her shoulder was a bit sore, but as she got to her feet, she realized that she had not been seriously injured. She hadn't even been hit by any glass. How could that have happened? Melissa asked Miss Hollows in an almost accusatory tone. She peered up into the darkness of the catwalks and metal pipes that ran above the stage, but saw nothing and no one. By now, the set decorators were running around, checking all the props. Everyone else was chattering about what had just happened and where they were when the light fell. Miss Hollows stood in the middle of all this chaos, eerily calm. What was that noise? I heard, Tiffany said as she walked out onto the stage from the wings and spotted the smashed-up light and the crowd surrounding Bree. What happened? Bree stared at Tiffany and wondered where she had just been. Why hadn't she rushed on stage with everyone else? What had she been doing? Then Bree caught herself. What am I thinking? Even she wouldn't try to hurt me, would she? I'm fine, Bree replied. It was just an accident. Let's try that scene again, this time without the falling light. Bree's little joke broke the tension on stage. Fantastic, Gabrielle, Miss Hollow said. The show must go on. A few minutes later, the janitor had cleaned up the broken light, and the rehearsal resumed. This time, the scene between Carrie and Rachel went off without a hitch. When rehearsal ended, Bree and Melissa walked from the auditorium, heading toward the front door of the school. So, Liz, I wasn't going to tell you about this, but after what happened today, Bree's words trailed off. Go on, Melissa encouraged her friend. Last night I had a terrifying dream, Bree began. I was sitting in the audience of a theater when I realized that it was actually our auditorium. Then a play began, and it turned out to be The Last Sleepover. So you were dreaming about us doing the show? Melissa said, sounding a bit relieved to learn that her friend's big news was only about a dream. But that's just it, Liz, Bree continued. It wasn't us doing the show. In the dream, everybody was wearing out-of-date clothes, like from the 80s or something. Then the girl playing Carrie came out onto the stage to start the show, and she was wearing those same kind of clothes. I think I was watching the original performance, the one that Tiffany told us about. Just because of the clothes? Melissa asked. I mean, dreams can be pretty weird. Your brain takes stuff from a bunch of different places and mushes it all up together. Not just the clothes, Liz, Bree said, taking a deep breath. I saw the accident Tiffany described. I was sitting in the audience, watching the light fall onto the girl who was playing Carrie. It was just like Tiffany had described it, and it was exactly like what happened to me. So what are you saying, Bree? Melissa asked. That there's some evil spirit connected to the play, or that someone is out to get you? I think Tiffany made up that story, and it's getting to you. I mean, if a girl died right here on this stage, then everyone would know about it, right? Bree nodded. And the light falling today? Melissa added. Well, that was just a coincidence. Accidents happen, even coincidental ones. Bree kept nodding. It was easier this way. Melissa made some good points, but that didn't explain away her easiness. Listen, I gotta go, Melissa continued. My mom is picking me up. Are you sure you're okay? Do you want to ride home? No, I'm going to stick around here for a bit, Bree said. She stood in the hallway and watched Melissa hurry from the school. Maybe Melissa was right. The whole thing, Tiffany's story, her dream, the accident and rehearsal, might be just a combination made-up story and wild coincidence. But somehow she didn't believe that. She was still very shaken up. Bree knew that because this was a Thursday, Miss Harris, the school librarian, stayed late to help students with their research projects. She turned toward the school library and marched down the hall, striding purposefully. She would get to the bottom of all this, and she would do it now, before another rehearsal took place. Bree opened the library's large oak door and walked inside. Every time she came here, she realized just how lucky she was. She had seen a few other school libraries while visiting friends, but the library at Thomas Jefferson Middle School was clearly a cut above. She had almost forgotten how busy the place got on Thursdays after school, and it had been a while since she'd had to come here for a research project. Almost at the moment she entered the room, a short man with a thick shock of snow-white hair appeared from between two tall bookshelves and shuffled toward Bree. Bree Hart, how are you? The man said. Hi, Mr. Harris, Bree said. I'm fine, thanks. Seeing Mr. Harris always made Bree smile. He had been at the school for more than 20 years. He loved his job, and though he'd long been eligible for retirement, he saw no reason to stop. This library, its books, computers, and vast archives, was the focus of his life, and he loved nothing more than helping students. I haven't seen you in a while, Mr. Harris said. Now, what can I help you with today? I need to look into a bit of Thomas Jefferson Middle School history, she replied. Ah, one of my favorite topics, since I've been here for most of it, Mr. Harris joked. What are you looking for in particular? Well, Mr. Harris, I'm in the school play, Bree began. Yes, I know, the librarian said, playing the lead. If I'm not mistaken, I'm very much looking forward to seeing it. Yes, Bree continued, feeling a bit self-conscious. Until this moment, she had been so focused on her work in the play that the thought of people she knew coming to see her perform hadn't crossed her mind in a while. I'm actually here to research the history of the play itself. I believe it was performed at the school once before and only for one night. I see, Mr. Harris said, his curiosity clearly piqued. That was a little before my time, and now that you mention it, I do recall hearing about some incident related to a play. Do you know why the play was performed only once? Well, that's what I'm here to find out, Bree explained. I heard a story about what happened back then, but I wanted to find out whether or not it was really true. To quote a cliché, you've come to the right place, Mr. Harris said. Bree could almost see an actual twinkle in his eye. He loved his work, and a new project, digging around, doing what he liked to call informational archaeology, always made his face light up. I have every issue ever published of the Jeffersonian, dating from the beginning of the school's opening, Mr. Harris explained. Follow me, Bree. Bree trailed a few steps behind him as he wended his way through the stacks. She always marveled at how he seemed to know exactly where every single thing in this vast library could be found, and she had to walk at a fairly brisk pace to keep up with Mr. Harris, who was well into his 60s. Once he was on the trail of information needed to solve a problem or answer a question, he wasted no time. Here we are, he said, practically hopping onto a small step ladder at the base of a tall bookcase. When did you say the play was performed? I don't have an exact year, Mr. Harris, but I think it was about 30 years ago, so the early 1980s. The play is called The Last Sleepover. Mr. Harris ran his finger along the wide spines of row after row of plastic magazine holders. Each container held a year's worth of the monthly school newspaper. Let's begin with 1979, he said, handing a container down to Bree. He placed it onto the desk beside the shelf. Here's 1980, 1981, and 1982. He stepped down from the ladder. Much to Bree's surprise, he took his seat beside her at the desk. I can do this myself if you have other students to help, she said, flattered by the special attention, but a bit confused. Oh, anyone who needs help can find me, Mr. Harris replied, his eyes sparkling. I'm a bit of a theater buff myself, and you know how much I love school history. Why don't you start with 1979, and I'll take 1980. Bree took the container labeled The Jeffersonian, 1979, and pulled out the yellowed issue. She was immediately struck by the fashion and hairstyles of the students in the photos. Everyone looked as if they had stepped out of a dream. Bree went issue by issue, carefully flipping through the delicate pages, scanning the paper for any mention of the last sleepover. It's not 1979, she said, when she had gone through the December issue. Nor is it 1980, Mr. Harris added. He handed 1981 to Bree and took 1982 for himself. Bree repeated the searching process with the issues from 1981. When she reached March, her eyes opened wide. Mr. Harris, here it is, she cried, then looked around to see if she had disturbed anyone in the library. Mr. Harris pulled his chair up close to Bree's. She pointed to the page, then read the headline aloud. This year's school play announced, she continued reading. The drama department has decided that this year's show will be a brand new play called The Last Sleepover. The play was written by and will be directed by Thomas Jefferson, drama teacher Mildred P. Wormhouse. Bree paused. Mildred? She muttered to herself. Millie is short for Mildred. Mildred P. Wormhouse, the playwright, must have named the ghost after herself. Was she a girl who never got invited to a sleepover? Excuse me? Mr. Harris said. Huh? Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind. That name just made me think of something, Bree replied. She continued reading. The first meeting of all students interested in being involved with the play will be held on March 8th in the auditorium. Bree set March aside and pulled out the April issue. She unfolded the paper, and there, running across the front page, was a headline twice as big as any she had seen so far. Lead actress dies opening night.